start. So we start with the judiciary. Do you have a PowerPoint or?
Oh, I think it's on your computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Hello. Yep. Okay. Good morning, Vice Chair Keith Algarine and WAM committee members, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chair Wakai, and Senate Judiciary Committee members. I am Tom Mick, head of the Judiciary Policy and Planning Department. With me today are Administrative Director and Deputy Administrative Director of the courts, Rod Miley, Brandon Kimura, Department Head Susan Gokros, Kevin Thornton, Terry Jiren, and Eric Tanagawa, First Circuit Court Chief Court Administrator, Laurie Okita, and other key judiciary personnel. Today I will briefly summarize our biennium budget requests. I have a handout which I believe has been uploaded on your computer, which also summarizes this request and provides some additional information. Please let me know if it is not on your computer and you would like a hard copy of the handout as well. As you know, the mission of the judiciary is to adjudicate disputes brought before the courts and administer.
I think he wants a hard copy.
Yeah. Nope. Sorry.
Essentially.
Just Okay. Okay. As you know, the mission of the judiciary is to adjudicate disputes brought before the courts and administer justice impartially, efficiently, and in an accessible manner in accordance with the law. I would like to focus on the word accessible for a few moments. Since the start of Chief Justice Mark Rechtenwald's term a number of years ago, one of his and the judiciary's goals has been to provide the public with greater access to civil and criminal justice systems. To that end, the National Center for Access to Justice in 2016 ranked Hawaii number 3 overall in the U.S. for making access to justice a reality for all people. Specifically, it ranked the Hawaii Judiciary number 1 for providing support for people with limited English proficiency, as the judiciary has almost 400 interpreters that provide interpreter services in 45 languages or dialects. Further, the judiciary is translating court forms from English into the 12 languages most frequently encountered in state courts, and has a website that provides information in 14 languages other than English. The National Center ranked the judiciary number 5 in support for self-represented litigants, as more than 23,000 litigants have been assisted by volunteer attorneys in self-help centers throughout Hawaii since the first one opened in Kauai in 2011. Other programs that help support self-represented litigants include the Hawaii Appellate Pro Bono Program, which focuses on civil cases and matches income qualifying litigants with attorneys willing to provide legal services without charge. Hawaii Online Pro Bono, which is a web-based tool that allows income qualifying residents to request brief advice and counsel from volunteer Hawaii attorneys. The Plain Language Forms Project, to replace and revise formal and technical text with plain language on 5 common district court forms. And the Volunteer Court Navigator Pilot Program, which stations volunteer court navigators on various floors in the courthouse to assist self-represented litigants when they come to the courthouse. Technologically, access to justice has also been enhanced through, one, its website, voted the #1 court website in the National Association of Court Management's top 10 Court Technology Solution Awards, through the launching in January 2017 of the Hawaii Courts 3 mobile app that provides a wealth of information about Hawaii's courts, and through working with the Legal Aid Society to develop interactive software to help the public to complete certain civil legal forms. The Judiciary is also involved in two other important projects that use technology to increase access. These being the e-reminder service pilot project that is launching, actually going live today, in which will send electronic reminders about court hearings to criminal defendants. And then it's the Microsoft Portal project, which is focused on developing an online legal service portal powered by artificial intelligence to help people identify legal problems and then access legal resources that address both their legal issues and related needs. Specialty courts and programs also provide another aspect of access to justice with the establishment in recent years of such programs as drug court, girls court, mental health court, steps to avoid eviction program, etc. Most of these start on Oahu and then, if successful, expand to the neighbor islands. For example, the Veterans Court started on Oahu in 2013 and is now on every island, while the Truancy Court began in Waianae in 2016 and is now in Hilo and West Kauai. Also, in January 2017, with grant and subsequent legislative funding, the Judiciary, in collaboration with Hawaii, the Honolulu prosecuting attorney and the state public defender, established the Community Outreach Court, which targets nonviolent offenders who are primarily homeless and face problems obtaining basic services and necessities such as food and shelter. Court sessions are held twice a month in Honolulu District Court, once a month in Waiawa District Court, and once a month now in the Waianae Public Library. Plans are to expand this court to other areas on Oahu as well, so as to be closer to communities where the participants in this court live. Since the Community Outreach Court first began operation in January 2017, 102 persons have participated in the program. 1,145 cases have been cleared from court dockets, and defendants have served some 2,125 community service hours rather than face jail or fines that unlikely would be paid, just lead to a continuation of the problem. Now on to our budget. Our general fund biennium budget request is for 29 new permanent positions and additional funding of $1.75 million in 2020 and $2.54 million in 2021, which are just 1% and 1.5% respectively of the Judiciary's current budget base. Our general fund biennium budget requests primarily relate to two areas: essential staffing for court administrative operations and client services. The need for additional essential staffing is a major concern for the Judiciary, especially as workload increases and becomes more detailed and complex, as additional requirements are placed on judges and staff, and as the number of pro se litigants continues to increase and require the attention of judges and staff. Specifically, First Circuit is requesting funding for an already authorized district family court judge and 3 support staff positions, as well as funding and positions for district court judge and staff to handle DUI cases and serve as a substitute drug court judge as needed. Relative to the family court judge that they are asking for, the 2007 legislature provided these positions prior to the opening of the court complex in Kapolei. That's why only funding is needed. The district court judge First Circuit is asking for is needed for DUI cases to help alleviate court congestion and backlog, and lessen the possibility of Rule 48 dismissals, as appellate decisions during the last 9 years have greatly impacted the burden of proof needed for conviction. In fact, from January 2009 to December 2017, an average of 4,900 DUI cases per year were initiated in First Circuit, as compared to an average 3,300 cases per year the 9 years prior to 2009. So that's a 1,600 case average per year increase. Second and Fifth Circuits are also requesting funding and positions for an additional district court judge and district family court judge, respectively, along with staff. For Second Circuit, the last district court judge was added in 1982, and the population on Maui has more than doubled from the 77,000 since then, back then. Further, since 2011, while the population of Maui has increased by some 6%, new criminal filings have increased by 29% and traffic filings by 17%. For Fifth Circuit, there is just one family court judge who is responsible for more than 2,000 new family court filings in fiscal year 18, as compared to an average 1,200 to 1,300 such filings per family court judge in the Second and Third Circuits. When comparing fiscal year 18 caseload in the Second Circuit at 1,913 cases per family court judge, and Third Circuit at 3,065 cases per family court judge, the lone Fifth Circuit family court judge was much higher at some 4,835 cases. Moving on, the Intermediate Court of Appeals, or ICA, is requesting an additional staff attorney position to cover increased ICA workload resulting from the 2006 change to the appellate system, in that almost all appeals and related motions are filed with and resolved by the ICA rather than the Supreme Court. Since 2006, the ICA's appeals caseload has almost doubled, and its motions caseload increased by more than 10 times to approximately 2,500 procedural and substantive motions formerly handled by the Supreme Court. For client services, First Circuit has 5 requests. The first 2 are for no-cost temporary to permanent position conversions to bring stability to 2 important programs, the Y0 to 3 court and the mental health unit. A permanent program manager coordinator position for the 0 to 3 court is critical to providing quality program management while fostering the coordinated team approach needed to ensure that appropriate early intervention services are provided to infants, toddlers, and their families to effect family unification, the ultimate goal. The mental health unit positions are for specially trained probation officers who supervise clients with severe mental illness who are placed on conditional release and discharged from the state mental hospital. These clients need intensive supervision and a stable relationship with the probation officer. The other 3 First Circuit requests in the client service area are positions and funding for 1, the community outreach court expansion to make it a true mobile court in providing services to communities where residentially challenged individuals reside. Secondly, for First Circuit's community service and restitution unit to handle increased workload, help with the community outreach court, address the backlog for restitution and ability to pay studies, manage community service placements, recruit agencies that will provide positions for community service, and to monitor work sites. And lastly, for First Circuit's court interpreter unit to assist in meeting the increased demands for interpreter services, and in so doing, address federal and state laws that require language access to be provided to all court users. Second Circuit's request in the client services area is for additional funding for its domestic violence intervention contract to ensure continuation of these important and mandated services throughout Maui County, where the number of providers available to provide such services is quite limited. The Judiciary has only two other general fund requests. These relate to the Judiciary's new Keahu'olu Courthouse in Kona, scheduled to open in fiscal year 20. Specifically, one groundskeeper and 5 janitorial positions are needed. 5 additional janitorial positions are needed to fully staff these type services at the new courthouse. And additional funding is requested to support new building operating costs related to electricity, other utilities, annual maintenance contracts for elevators, air conditioning, fire alarms, energy management, water treatment, and refuse, and for other expenses such as janitorial and building maintenance supplies and various repair and maintenance costs not covered by contract. For capital improvement project, next page. For capital improvement project or CIP funding, the Judiciary is requesting an additional $23.3 million in fiscal year 20 and $15.9 million in fiscal year 21 to address certain critical needs, some of which relate to the health and safety of Judiciary employees and the public. Specifically, the Judiciary is requesting funds for Kahumano Holly and First Circuit to 1, upgrade and modernize the fire alarm systems and elevators, both of which are more than 30 years old, are tied into each other, and which continue to malfunction with greater frequency. Secondly, we need to repair leaks into the basement evidence room, storage and communication rooms in this building. And third, we'd like to make atrium security renovations. For Second and Fifth Circuits, funds are needed to continue ongoing projects to improve security at Ho'opili Holly in the Second Circuit and to re-roof and repair leaks and damages at Pua Honua Kauliki in the Fifth Circuit, as well as funding for a new project for piping renovations in the Ho'opili Holly parking structure. Lastly, CIP funds are being requested to upgrade the Leilani Holly air conditioning system to protect and ensure the health and well-being of its occupants and the public, and in lump sum form to allow the Judiciary to address both continuing and emergent building issues statewide. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a briefing today regarding our biennium budget request.
If there's any questions?
Yes.
Senator Inouye.
Thank you. Thank you for being here as well. With regards to the Kona Courthouse,
Yeah.
aside from the maintenance ask, I thought we needed additional funds for furnishings or whatever, but I don't see it in your CIP. Or is it included in already funded?
Yeah, last year it was funded.
Yeah.
Funds
Oh,
for
okay. So
furniture,
that's
fixtures, and
we're
equipment.
clear
So
with that.
We're clear with that.
Okay. So all you need is the maintenance portion.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. With regards to your family court system, as we heard from the Hilo Courthouse or Hawaii Islands, we've added more days with family courts. So here on Oahu, whether it's in West Oahu, what days are you holding family courts?
Okay. All right. What days are we holding family
Monday
court?
through Friday.
Every day then?
Every day, yeah.
Okay. So there's coverage for the statewide neighbor islands. We've increased the days for family courts instead of once a week, as we heard last year. And I understand you made improvements with the judges there as well. And with our Waimea new judges as well. So we're hearing more cases, more days added to the schedules.
As far as I know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best that we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Kahile.
Thanks, Tom, for coming up. You had said in your testimony, you mentioned the ICA. Can you go back and clarify that?
Yeah, they need an additional staff attorney position is what they're asking for. They've been asking for it for a number of years. Felt the workload increase with the increase in appeals motions that they've had to deal with, or appeals cases they've had to deal with, as well as the number of motions that they have to deal with.
Do you know what, out of curiosity, what the number of petitions of writs for certiorari to the Supreme Court are coming out of the ICA since they
I don't know it offhand, but it may be in this.
Just wondering how many cases that come out of the ICA are appealed to the Supreme Court and what percentage the Supreme Court accepts or denies in terms of...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I understand that we have about 139 approximately requests for writs of certiorari. And that of the... we can find out the percentage in terms of the number that are accepted.
Okay.
Why he did it?
You did?
We can get that back.
Just wondering, you know, because that eventually overburdens the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I thought it might be in the statistical table.
Right, if you can say your name and title.
I'm sorry, Rod Miley, Administrative Director of the Courts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Keith Agaran.
Right, if you could stay up there, just to follow up. You know, I did attend the bar convention this year, but I did not attend the appellate seminar. And I know that one of your top requests is for a staff attorney at the ICA. Now, at the appellate seminar, I think there was a presentation made that one of the big problems of why there's so much of a workload is that because the Constitution at Article 3, Section 5 only requires that legislators be residents of Hawaii for at least 3 years, and we're not even required to be, this is what someone told me, that we don't need to be high school graduates, and so all of these statutes are terribly written. And that's one of the reasons why you need another ICA staff attorney, because there's so much work caused by the legislature being incompetent.
I was not there, and if that statement was made, that was incorrect, and that was inappropriate.
No, I think it is correct. We're not required to be high school graduates. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that, right?
I'm sorry, Senator, were you there when that statement was made in your presence in that manner?
I think it was passed on to me as the statements were being made.
Okay, I do not believe that that was what was intended. I believe that the request for a staff attorney for the Intermediate Court of Appeals is to help prepare the case when it goes to the panel, and that includes preparing
Okay, in the same
responses.
presentation, apparently the person also suggested that some of the problems is really caused by lack of training at the lower levels, that some of your own civil case clerks are not lawyers, and so they're letting minute orders at district court being sufficient, nothing written that comes up to be a final judgment. That's another problem that somebody, I guess I think this might have been a staff attorney at the ICA making this presentation. So if that's the case, then shouldn't it just be a question of training your own clerks then to make sure that there is a final judgment that can be appealed?
I think in terms of the record for the appeal, that would be appropriate.
And I think in Tom's presentation, he also noted that part of the increase in workload is due to court rulings. So are you suggesting that if the Supreme Court that manages the judiciary issues rulings that cause more work, that justifies coming back and asking for more resources? Is that right?
I'm not sure the two are connected, Senator.
Well, it was in his testimony. It's what he said.
Would you rephrase your question?
Tom said that in part due to court rulings in district courts, there's been an increase in the workload, in part to address some of the rulings that have come in from the appellate courts. Am I mistaken? Did I mishear you?
I said that anyway. No, I think if I go back and look exactly what I said.
Yeah, I apologize, Senator. I didn't hear that during Mr. Mick's presentation.
Okay, if I was mistaken, that's fine, but that's why I thought you said.
Yeah, since 2006, the ICA's appeals caseload has almost doubled, and its motions caseload increased by more than 10 times due to approximately 2,500 procedural and substantive motions formally handled by the Supreme Court.
And I do apologize, Senator, if I misheard Mr. Mick's presentation.
Okay.
Members, any other questions? Senator Kim?
Good morning, thank you. Question about your overtime. Notice that your First Circuit has over $1 million in overtime. Can you explain what's that due to and what's causing it? What kind of vacancies you have?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Okita. I'm the Chief Court Administrator for the First Circuit. So our overtime of $1 million is primarily related to the overtime for our juvenile detention center, both for Home Maluhia as well as the detention home of Kapolei. We have recently implemented an attendance program for the detention facility that has reduced the number of hours and as well as costs related to overtime that at least for, I don't think it's reflected in this year's overtime stats, but it has been bringing down our overtime costs significantly.
I think also if you look at the vacancy information, what I think Senator Kim was mentioning too, there's something like 21 juvenile detention worker positions that are vacant right now, and this contributes to the overtime. It's very difficult. You think it's easy to go out and find juvenile detention workers. It's actually a long process because they have to go through certain testing requirements and have background checks, and by the time you get through, I don't know what percentage I can say. I don't know if you have that percentage, but a lot of them just don't pan out, as you go through this process. And so it's difficult to find detention workers that you can rely on.
So you have 21 vacancies.
21.
Out of how many?
Out of total in the detention services branch, and Nathan for our social services manager can assist, but we have over 120 employees in the detention services branch.
Sorry, how many?
Over 120.
120.
Yeah.
And how long have this vacancies been going on?
We do have a number that are over 1 year that have been vacant. What the process that the staff, the people that handle interviews do is they try to fill the permanent positions first, and then move to the temporary, and then move to what we call intermittent positions. So they kind of serve as like substitute workers. So
these are all funded positions.
They are not all. They have not been all funded by the legislature, authorized by the legislature.
How many is not authorized, or how many is not funded?
I would need to go back and get back to you on that.
Of the vacancies, 16 are temporary of the 21 vacancies.
I think I'm just asking whether they were authorized or not. Yeah. So not authorized.
Most of them
Okay,
are not
thank you.
authorized.
So can you tell us, probably you don't have the numbers, how much dollars are actually authorized, and where are those dollars going? Are they going to the overtime or not. And then I noticed, you said it should bring it down, but I noticed in the FY 2021 budget, you're still projecting, I don't know if you're projecting, but 1.4 million for FY 20 and 1.4 million for FY 21 for overtime, which actually makes it larger.
Okay.
So it doesn't seem like it's decreasing, or you're
And that I'm sorry. We'll go back and revisit that, and we should modify it if it should be reflective of the current cost.
And so with the current, how much do you feel that that's going to be reduced by?
For the overtime, I think we have, for the last fiscal year, it was reduced from over $1 million to about 800,000 or not, but we can get those figures to you. So it has been significant in the drop.
Okay, well, 800,000 is still quite a lot.
It is
so I'm
a lot.
hoping that you have a proposal as to how you're going to address this.
Okay.
Let me move on one more, if I may, Mr. Chair. You know, it was great that you're talking about all this support for self-represented litigants and all the things that you're doing, self-help counters and so forth. What are we doing to make the district court more user-friendly? And I think I've had meetings with the Judiciary, Mr. Miley, I believe you were there, as to how do we streamline it? Because you're talking about needing more judges, you're talking about the workload, and yet my personal experience in being in the circuit court is that they keep making you come back, and it just makes the calendar a lot longer, especially in the landlord-tenant code. So in practicality, it looks good on paper, but when you go to the court, you know, all these cases keep getting deferred, and the litigants have to come back time and time again, and it costs them money, and looking for parking, I mean, it's terrible. So what are we doing other than trying to educate the public on how to jump through all these hoops? I think that's been the concern that I've had.
Okay, thanks.
What we're trying to do is to approach it from a number of different ways, because what we're seeing are more people appearing without attorneys. The self-help centers and the district court downtown has what's called an access to justice room, where the attorneys can actually provide legal advice to folks.
Okay, can I stop you right there? It's not so much whether they have an attorney or not. Whether you have an attorney or not, you come before the court in your first hearing, and they go, how do you plead, or do you agree or disagree? Okay, come back. We schedule another appointment. And that's not even your trial. That's like I don't know, that's a pre-trial. And then you come back again, and you're there for like 5 minutes, and they send you home again. I mean, so it's not necessarily the fact that they're represented or not. The fact that the judges, even though if it's a open and shut kind of case, they will automatically make you come back. They don't deal with it. And then to me, that just makes it longer, the process. And these poor people come from, you know, Waianae, Ever Beach, Kali, all over, and they got to come back. They take off from work, and they're there for 2 minutes on the very first opening of the case.
And I apologize if that was your experience. If I could continue, one of the challenges that people without attorneys have is they're unprepared. So the point about meeting with someone who is experienced is to tell them, these are the issues in your case. This is the kind of information that the judge is going to ask for. This is what you should be prepared to do when you go before a judge. So the more prepared people are, the greater the likelihood that they will not need these continuances.
Okay. Well, they don't even ask you that, though. When you go in the first time, they don't even ask if you're prepared. They just ask you how you plead. And if they say, you know, not guilty, or I don't agree to that, I forgot what it was, and then they say, the judge told the plaintiff or the person, well, you know that all the documents are here, so what is going to be your argument? They don't even ask. I mean, they're not even letting you argue or letting you present. They make you come back. So it's not even whether you're prepared or not. It's just automatic. You're lucky if you're there 5 minutes. So I think something needs to be done, because if they can deal with the issue there, then they need to dispose it. If all the information is there, then they should address it, but they don't. And I think we've had this discussion. So, since we've had this discussion till now, and I've asked the judges that we've confirmed for district court what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to change this for the public. Because the majority of people in district court, they don't know. They think they're going to go there the first time that they're going to be able to plead their case right there and have it addressed, and they don't. They have to come back at least 3 times.
We are,
whether they're prepared or not.
We are starting a court navigator program where individuals will help folks without attorneys to present their information. And again, the purpose is really to get everything before the judge in a way that comports with due process, but doesn't make it overly technical. From your experience about having to come back, that will continue to work on.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry to belabor this, Mr. Chair, but what I'm hearing you saying is you're going to teach the public how to jump through all the hoops. You're going to teach the public how to come back time and time again. Because whether or not you're prepared, whether or not you have the documents, they're still making you come back for another trial date or a pre-trial to be a trial.
Yeah, and specifically, I'm not sure that both sides are prepared at that moment. If one side is unprepared, it may be that it's in the judge's discretion that it's not appropriate to move forward.
Well, how do they know that they're prepared when they don't even ask that question? They don't even ask the person, are you prepared? Are you prepared to deal with this? They don't. Okay, so I think you guys need to deal with that.
We will. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Harmon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So I'm really happy to hear about the continuing successes and expansion of the specialty courts. I think we all understand the benefits of that, and in terms of really saving lives. So thank you for that. So my question relates to all the discussion about the criminal justice reforms that are going on now. So might one of the outcomes of those reforms be perhaps an even greater emphasis on these specialty courts? Can we look forward to that going into the future?
Senator, we're always looking for better ways to do things, and we've really taken to heart the legislature's concern that we cannot keep proliferating specialty courts without being mindful that the expense and the benefits of that particular court have to be measured against other programs that are also requesting funding. So it has to make sense. It has to be evaluated against objective criteria. So it's not just we have good stories to tell, and then it has to be sustainable. So those are the kinds of steps that we look at before we take on the task of having any new courts. I can say that the community outreach courts with the legislature created has been a great success, and we've gone, we've committed to that. The other area that was a specialty court was also created by the legislature was the environmental court. So for those kinds of things, we would also welcome the legislature's guidance in terms of courts that the legislature feels are appropriate for the judiciary to provide.
Thank you. So I understand the need to, of course, document the successes and the statistics for sure. But I think based on what you presented today, you are already expanding, and those are based on the statistics that show the benefit.
Yeah, and I think one of the things on the district court judge in Maui, one of their, not arguments, but one of the things that they would like to support is a community outreach court on Maui, and having an additional judge would help support that. It's only so many judges that do so much, so all these specialty courts require a judge to be available to handle them as well.
Right. And as I recall, you also rely on staffing from Department of Human Services, is that correct? For some of those courts?
Public defender.
So not just judiciary?
Yes, we do try to coordinate services with other departments as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Senator Revere.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on what Senator Kim was asking, and maybe ask a question in a different way. Do you track, is there a statistic or do you keep track of the number of continuances or times that any particular case comes back to court? And if so, are there certain judges that dispatch things in less court appearances? In other words, would that be an important statistic if it's not being used now to judge efficiency in dispatching cases? How is that handled or overseen? I think I'm not sure if that was answered in the previous comments.
Okay, that we'll have to check and get back to you on. I know that we have some basis to do that.
In other words, if there's if you measure it and suddenly you find out that, wow, this one particular judge, it takes 15 times to get something done. And of course there's reasons for continuances due to circumstances, but if you don't even look, then maybe you're missing a metric that might help expedite things. Maybe they might say, well, maybe we can just finish this right here.
Okay, I know that we have been tracking the Rule 48 dismissals, and those are based on the right of a defendant in a criminal proceeding to have a trial within a specific time. Mm-hmm. And so that we have been tracking more closely.
And also maybe for children, abuse cases and things, because that's one that seems to go on and justice never comes for many.
Like family court matters.
Yes. And then one other thing, I'm annually intrigued by the CIP appropriation for the leaky roof in Kauai. How many more years will this be coming?
It's scheduled for this year. We're requesting $2.2 million, and then next year would be the final phase.
And that should finish it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Senator Pavel.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is looking at this budget, and in 2021, the budget is way more high than 2020. And then you get some positions that we talked about, Senator talked about, that have been vacant since 2016. And while these vacancies, whether we're paying into it or not, what is the money, and if the money is being allocated, what is the money and the positions? Why is it not filled? If it's not filled, why you guys are not closing it all off instead of asking for money for these positions that's not being filled?
We take every one of our vacant positions very seriously. To us, it's a resource. What it reflects is some of these positions are incredibly difficult to fill. And what we've done is we've tried to, in some cases, reorganize the units so that the positions are different. We're trying to update the positions to say, instead of filling like for like, maybe the position has evolved to the point where the kind of work that position did needs to be changed to reflect the current needs. In terms of some of the vacancy savings, as Senator was pointing out, the overtime, for example, at the detention home is partially caused by the vacancies. So we have to bring in people on overtime to fill the vacant positions. So it's not as though that money is being used for things that aren't related to the vacant positions.
Okay, I want to address your first part of your question, why is the second year of the biennium so much higher? And that's partly because in the first year of the biennium, when you ask for positions, you only ask for salaries for 6 months because it takes that length of time after it goes through the legislature and stuff to fill. So I only have 6 months of salary in the first year and 1 year of salary, a full year of salary. And that's really the only difference there. Yeah.
So the amount for the Court of Appeals, 56,941. That's for the 6 months.
Correct.
And then the actual pay is 103,236.
Correct. In some cases, you may have in the first year, depending on the position, you might need some equipment or desks or something, or computers or whatever that would not show up in the second year. So.
Chair, one more thing. I see you guys hiring like custodians and janitors to do but you guys contracting it out. You guys never look into hiring government workers to fulfill these areas of where you guys having waste pickup and janitorial work?
For the Big Island, the space that we currently occupy is the old Kona Hospital, and that the work is actually done by a contracted entity who, by statute, is allowed to do that. So there are no DAGS workers. So moving into the new courthouse, we have to hire folks to do that. So we'll have judiciary employees doing that work.
Yeah, we're not allowed to contract out those certain types of positions, those being janitorial, landscape, or something, and civil service.
Yeah, and just for maybe some background, for the last 2 years, the legislature, and specifically the House Finance Committee, has asked us to make sure that our contracts for like rubbish pickup or those kinds of things that traditionally would have been done by state worker, that we make sure that those services, if there are currently provided by state or even county folks, that we utilize that. And so for us, we've gone and checked every single contract for facilities work, for the kind of maintenance stuff, janitorial services, and rubbish pickup to make sure that there are no available state resources or even county resources to do that before contracting.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Senator Martin.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the outreach that you're doing and the support services to help your clients coming in. But one of the heavy caseload for your judges, the backlog of your judges, it seems to me that the judiciary is to adjudicate cases. So getting them into other courts, specialty courts, is good because you're taking the workload off the judges to make decisions. But if they're not making the speedy decisions, justice delayed is justice denied. So I'm just wondering, I know that long ago, monies were put in for an information system, and that was to align the courts from the district and not make it a specialty courts and have more of them all the way up to appeal. And so records actually should be digitized and follow cases so that what Senator Kim is talking about coming back, maybe more of that can be done online with judges having, stuff that we're learning to use in front of them so that you have the information before you and don't waste people's time coming in, having to take time off from work, and they are the ones being denied justice. So I'm just wondering, what have you done in terms of your information system, in terms of streamlining your system so in fact cases can be heard and adjudicated and moved out of the court and not just sort of sitting around to come back and come back and come back. And especially in the family court. So if you can identify what you're doing to streamline both the system and your technology use to really expedite hearing cases, adjudicating cases, and giving people justice.
Okay. Right now, our traffic, our criminal courts, so the misdemeanor cases, the felony cases, and the appellate cases are part of our judiciary information management system. So it's electronic filing. The document retrieval system is there. If any of you have used the Ho'ohiki or the eCourt Kukua system, you can see documents that have been filed. You can download them. And we are working on our civil system, and that is due later this year at the end, I believe in fall of 2019. After that, we'll be doing the family court. Family court is scheduled. Yeah. So we are working at modernizing and digitizing documents.
And once you do that, you put information into a system. It should be information, not just sort of all information. Are you also looking at how the paper gets processed now and whether there's more efficient ways to do that so information comes up that you need when you need it and not just put the paper into digitized form, because it does then help your system become much more streamlined to do the job you need to do, or that your staff need to do.
Yeah, and that's a very important consideration that we not call what it's called paving the cow path, that we make digital documents handle the same way physical documents are. So that's a part of when we go through the process of changing over to the electronic system, we make sure that the digital documents are not processed the same way simply because that's the way we handle paper.
And to involve your staff who are doing the work.
Yes.
You actually need to know the information they need to know so they can expedite the information to the judges to adjudicate the cases.
Okay.
Could we have a report of their progress?
All the questions and we'll follow up.
Okay.
I think there was one other thing, too, that we're trying to do that would alleviate some of the caseload eventually, and that we're just in initial stages of looking at online dispute resolution, setting up a project, a way to do that as well for certain types of cases, which would settle things and not take them necessarily into the court, help in that process as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Inouye.
Thank you. I'd like to discuss the issue with the services provided by the Sheriff's Department, in particular on the Big Island. Can you give us a history before? Because I understand the courts used to handle the services such as what the sheriffs are doing now. Providing warrants and all that kind of stuff. Now, Chair, I bring this issue up because we've had too many incidences on Hawaii Island as big as we are. The services provided by public safety, and because of the court system, we've had delays in transporting what do you call those arrested? They take them from Kona, they gotta go to Hilo. The delays in it, and then the Hilo person takes the other group over to the Kona courthouse, and then there's problems. And then the judges, by the time they transfer, I guess, offenders to Kona, they're being picked up by the Kona person, the sheriffs. So if Hilo is delayed because of whatever problems they have, the Kona person has nothing to do with it but just deliver the person to the court. And the judges give them hell. Why are you late? And so they got, I guess, chastised by the judge. And I'm wondering how we can coordinate and perhaps, I think I trust the court personnel more than I do PSD. Because we got lots of issues there. If we can have a coordinator, somebody from the court system, oversee what the sheriffs are doing, make sure that they have enough personnel to serve the warrants, which I understand is an issue. They're using people from Hilo to go to Waimea because they lack personnel. There's a big morale problems going on. but there needs to be some coordination with the delivery services of PSD. But and I know the personnel in the courts are so frustrated because they have to make sure that, I guess, the dockets or whatever is available for the judge to make decisions on a timely basis. So it seems like, and I understand the courts used to do that.
Senator, a long time ago, it was so long ago I had hair, the bailiffs of the court did a lot of the work that the sheriffs did. And then that progressed into the creation of the sheriff's division, and there have been some things since then. With the specific concern that you have, we have been working with Director Espenda.
After our discussions that I brought it up earlier to you and CJ.
As well as Deputy Director Renee Sonobe Hong and Sheriff Al Cummings. And they've been really great, and we are working to resolve not just the issues on the Big Island, but statewide, and trying to clarify the responsibilities so we have a very specific understanding of what needs to be done and how that will be achieved. So we'll continue to work on that. We also have to make sure that we're doing everything we can on the judiciary side to make sure that, none of those delays are caused by us, and if we can do things better, then we need to work on that as well.
I really feel sorry for your staff on the courts, whether Waimea or Kona, who has to, and they have no control. But it's pretty sad, but perhaps just having somebody from your, I guess, divisions throughout the state make sure that somebody's on it all the time and report that. But
I can assure you, Senator, that we're working on it at the highest level.
yeah, it's kind of interesting, Mr. Chair, and we thank this legislature and yourself for providing the lieutenant's position for Kona. We had the lieutenant managing the entire island out of Hilo. Like there's morale problems in Kona. And to think about it, that the lieutenant in Hilo, who manages Kona as well, fought against the position that we created, spoke against the bill that I had, the position. And now he's applying because we have the position that we funded. The same guy is applying for the position in Kona. He wants to go Kona, and he's the problem. He wants to go Kona because he has a girlfriend in Kona. So now, and then he files a grievance, so we haven't been able to fill the position. I mean, it's, again, like I say, maybe we can do a project temporarily using the courts managing the sheriffs only for Big Island. Or create positions and transfer the monies they have for the positions on the Big Island over to the courts. I know it's more job, but I know we have to give you positions, but it's running havoc on the Big Island. Thank you. Just had to air my frustration with my constituents and helping out our court personnel on both Waimea and Kona.
Senator Kahele.
Go ahead. Real quick, homelessness is a big issue in our state, in many of our districts that many of us serve on. Such a big social fabric of our community. And of course, the judicial system handles our judicial and both non-judicial foreclosure. Many of those cases go to the ICA, as you well know, on their appellate dockets, governed by Chapter 667. Curious to know your thoughts on suggestions where the legislature can improve the foreclosure process. And, we have abandoned homes. Many of our Native Hawaiian communities are homeless. Thoughts on that, Rod?
Senator, my understanding is that the non-judicial foreclosure process is very, very limited, and I'm not sure how much use it has. So most of the foreclosures are going through the judicial foreclosure process, and it's my understanding that the number of judicial foreclosures is relatively stable. So whatever it is that people are figuring out, they're not necessarily using that process, but we could certainly, we are part of a number of task forces looking at homelessness, but specifically for mortgage foreclosures. I can get back to you on.
I mean, ultimately, it's the most economically challenged in our communities against the big banks, and many big banks are not Hawaii banks, right? And that's a big problem. And, I know the judiciary's role is to implement the law, and it's our job to define what that law is. And when we're dealing with high incidences of homelessness throughout Hawaii, many communities that have abandoned homes, that just really affect our communities. It's something that we're trying to figure out how you attack the problem. One of the issues is within the judicial system.
We can get back to you on that, Senator.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Thanks, Chair. Can we go back to your funding priorities on the personnel side? Your two highest priorities were family court judges in the First and Fifth Circuits. Information that you provided says that in the Fifth Circuit, the Fifth Circuit has the highest medium disposition time of over 1,600 days. Is that correct for civil suits?
That was on Fifth Circuit, correct?
Fifth Circuit, Kauai, yeah.
And you're dealing with median times there too, as you know.
I understand, but that's over 4 years, right?
I know. Okay. So I went back because I was curious myself. There were 20 cases that were resolved that year for prior than 2000. So you had, they're trying to clean up the system. So they had all these old cases, and hopefully.
My question is, if we provide the family court judge, is that going to make a dent in that number?
I think it would. I think it would help because it would be also providing staff as well. With the additional staff, part of the problem is having staff to help research the old cases and see, what's causing.
So the staff won't necessarily be only helping the new judge to be assisting with other stuff as well?
I think so.
Okay. Well, do you have any idea what the order of magnitude, or how big a drop is it? How big a drop will that result in if we put in another judge there?
I really don't. Hard for me to say, but I don't want to get. But I'm sure it would come way back down because again, we're rid of those. We've got eliminated those real old cases. I think there's 5 left that are still need to be resolved from old times. So I think it would help. I really do.
In the First Circuit, the tendency is to take district court judges and assign them to family court, but that hasn't resulted in, that's not solving the problem, I guess, is the question.
It's not. And per diem judge usage is up in the First Circuit as well because we just don't have enough judges that we have to cover. Retirements, judges retire, so we have that issue as well.
Okay. I can never remember. So are all the family court judges district judges? Some of them are civil.
They also have circuit court,
circuit court judges as well.
Two or three.
But the CJA has the authority to move people from district over to family if there's a problem.
At the district court level.
Yes. At the district court level. Okay. Can you tell me on the family court side, what takes up the most time? Which of the calendars, regular, marital, special, criminal, do we know? Where's the time going?
Time or caseload?
Well, time would be more interesting, but caseload would probably be something of a proxy, depending on how long they take to resolve.
We can get back to you with that information. I think it's more of what we're tracking is probably closer to caseload. So we would.
But you don't track how long what the average length or the median length of a case, because some cases take longer than others, right? So. You don't track that?
From opening to disposition, is that the time that you're looking at, or is
Yeah, I
it
think
like the number of proceedings per case?
Well, I mean, really, it would be nice to know how many hours are actually spent, because sometimes things get delayed a while and nothing really happens, but I don't know. That's why I'm curious about what you keep track of.
Yeah, I'm not sure there'll be hours anywhere, but
we can try to find that information.
Yeah, I just don't know how detailed their input is into the system.
Turning to civil legal services, under JUD 601, are you planning to, I mean, I don't see it in your request. Are you going to be asking for any funding for civil legal services for low and moderate income persons?
We don't ask for that. What's happened in the past years, the legislature has decided to provide us funding for that in various years. It was 16, 17, nothing in 18, and they provided us $450,000 this last year. But it's always been on a one-time, non-recurring basis. So we just have a hard time understanding if the legislature does not want to put it in our budget on a recurring basis, how we can really ask for it.
At what point do you consider a recurring expense and then put the number in yourself?
2 consecutive years, but that's appropriate.
They have to be in the same biennium, or doesn't matter?
It's best in the same biennium. Yeah,
okay. I mean, Chief Justice has made a big deal out of access to justice, and it seems. I mean, yeah, it's great if people can do pro se, but it's just not the same thing as having a lawyer, especially if it's a complicated case.
Right.
Okay, I'll leave it at that there. I have more, but if other people want to... Go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, though, I'm curious, though, because a couple of years back, we did not pass a supplementary budget for the judiciary, but we did pass money for legal services. So I would think that would indicate to the judiciary that we think it's important.
There's a code on the worksheets that comes to us, and it's an R or an N, and an N indicates non-recurring function, so that means it's not going to continue in our budget base for the next year. If it's coded with an R, then it can continue forward. So, we had the task force a number of years ago that, recommended, let's say, $2.1 million for civil legal services. But as a result of that task force, we actually got one-time funding of $600,000 in 16, one-time funding of $750,000 in 17, nothing in 18, and then $450,000 last year. And we had this question last year, or 2 years ago, when we didn't get anything in 18. How come we didn't ask for it? Well, it was a one-time thing, and it wasn't one of our requests.
Fair enough. Yeah. On CIP, I just had a couple of questions. You're asking for about $17 million for Kahumana Holly. Can you just, you don't have to do that today, but if you could provide the committee with the breakdown on what that money is going to be used for, I think. Okay. Because I think that's the bulk, largest request that you're making.
You're talking about for the fire alarms and elevators? Yeah.
And the other is on the lump sum amount. I think you're asking for $3 million each year. And I guess the question would be generally, is that adequate? Because I think with a lump sum, you have a little bit more discretion. You may not even need to do any planning or design. You just basically can contract it out. If you could maybe think about that and get back to us on whether or not that number and whether or not you're making a dent in your R&M on the backlog throughout the system, because the new courthouse in Wailuku is no longer very new, and so and obviously all the courthouses have leaky roofs and other problems are coming up. So when you think about whether or not $3 million per each year is enough to really make a dent in it, but think about it.
My personal opinion, okay, and that's what it is that we could certainly use more. You could use $5 million maybe per year, but we also have to, you have to put it in with everything else. If we ask for too much, you may not even get that. So yeah, you could use more, you can make more of a dent. But there's another issue as well. At the moment, we only have one CIP person, so you can only do so much with the people you have and stuff. So we're trying to weigh all the different things. The $3 million is what we've asked for kind of regularly in the past years. Yeah, we could ask for more. I think 6 or 7 years ago, we asked for $5 million a couple of times. We did get it, but we won't.
Thank you for the opportunity, Senator. We'll get that information to you, and we'll see if there's any revision on our request for the lump sum.
Sure, and just let us see if you can show us what your backlog is, if you have one, and we can look at that, because I think people are getting very conscious about the backlog that some of the other, some at least executive departments and the university and the DOE, and obviously you're an independent branch, and you guys have to make some decisions about what to do with your facilities, but if we just let it continue, I mean, I don't think you're going to be looking at building new judiciary complexes in the very near future. So,
thank you. And Chair Delacruz, if I could, just as a matter of, I would like to sincerely apologize to Senator Keith Agron and the members of the Senate and as well as the House for a statement that was made, if it could be understood in a way that was not respectful. I would like to personally apologize on behalf of the judiciary. The statement that you were referring to earlier, I'm troubled by that if it could be understood in a way that would be disrespectful. So I would like to apologize to all the members. That certainly would not be something that is, it would not be appropriate. So thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Senator McCoy.
Thank you, Chair. Happy New Year. I really applaud the judiciary embracing technology, but I look at your budget and I see dozens and dozens of contracts for outsourcing your technology needs, whether it's for maintenance of your systems, upgrading your systems, and that goes kind of in counter to what we have been trying to have ETS do in terms of bringing in more state government, so we don't have building capacity within state government, so we don't have to outsource as much of our IT work. And can you explain to us how you're working with ETS and what cost savings we're realizing by that collaboration?
Kevin?
Kevin Thornton, IT Director for the State Judiciary. So part of the reason for having to contract out at the moment is we still have to maintain the old systems that run the legacy case management system. So we are still running IBM technology, the mainframe. We have PS400, that's for our justice system. So that consumes a lot of our current IT staff's time. As we move the systems over to the new system, it's called JIMS, the Judiciary Information System, we are moving staff over to that new technology. But it is, it's also an issue of understanding or training. The staff are trained in much older technology, COBOL, CICS, those types of technology. The new systems are Java and Oracle. It's a process and it takes time. So ETS, we rely heavily on ETS for our network services and security. We do, I do attend their strategic planning, and I am trying to align with the direction that was set by the previous CIO in regards to moving to cloud technology. That's another direction that we need to move. But again, that's going to change the dynamic for our workforce. That would mean less staff actually doing hands-on technology and more the management of that technology, the configuration. So it's a change. It's a change for our IT staff.
I noticed you're spending $1.9 million on mainframes, which I imagine is upgrades to your data storage capacity. The University of Hawaii, or is that $1.9 million for?
It's not. We lease our mainframe at a cost of, and then we lease the software that runs on that mainframe. And as I said, it's running the legacy system, and the legacy system, unfortunately, is getting smaller and smaller as it migrates to the new system. But unfortunately, the mainframe comes in very limited sizes. You unfortunately, it's a high-cost device. We are moving to commodity servers, which are much cheaper, less expensive, but the mainframe, unfortunately, is a very fixed price. It's a 5-year lease.
Have you explored the opportunity to put some of your mainframes into the University of Hawaii? I talked to Garrett Yoshimi there. He says he has more than enough capacity to handle all of your data storage needs, which would save taxpayers a lot of money.
And I could talk to Garrett. I did talk to the previous CIO in regards to using the ETS mainframe. And again, it's an interesting costing with mainframes. Even if you have a small system, the pricing is based on the size of the mainframe. So if you move over there, even if you have a small system, it's actually based on the size of the mainframe you're using, not the system they're putting on the mainframe. So sorry, yes, I did talk to ETS, but not to Garrett Yoshimi at UH, and I shall.
Okay, I'll put you in contact. Thank you. Chair.
Okay. Can we go back to the community court outreach program? You've talked about it a little bit, but could you describe briefly what the next steps are? What do you where do you anticipate going, and the scope of the effort?
Okay, Calvin. Calvin. This is Calvin's operation, so I'll let him discuss.
Good morning, Senator Rhodes. Calvin Cheng, Deputy Chief Court Administrator. Right now, Act 55 was implemented in 2017, so it required us to take the community outreach court into non-traditional court settings. We achieved that recently by moving into the Waianae Public Library, where we're holding sessions once a month. Right now, we're also in the Wahiawa District Court, and that was seen as our first step to achieving the goals of Act 55. So right now we're looking for other alternative areas in Wahiawa where we can take the calendar out of the courthouse, and we've been looking at the Wahiawa Public Library, and a nonprofit serving the nation has been available to us at this point.
Have you already held? Has somebody already held court in Chinatown, Iwilei, Palama area?
We're also looking, well, right now we have a court in Honolulu District Court, Courtroom 7B, which services the area and downtown area. But we are looking for other alternatives. We're looking at Kaka'ako area. We've actually started looking into Kaneohe, and we haven't really reached out into the downtown area yet.
Okay, because it would appear to me that there are plenty of people there who might be eligible for that kind of judicial adjudications.
Part of it would be for the facility, where the facility can hold court. And as I expressed to others, even though we go into a non-traditional court setting, we still are a court. So being able to have the proper facilities and access to, so we can ramp up our laptops and our computers and have security.
Okay, let me switch to back to the vacancy question. According to the materials you provided, there's 160 vacancies, of which 121 are permanent positions. And your budget request seeks another 29 new positions. So on its face, that seems odd. Can you explain why that makes sense?
Well, I'm not sure it makes sense, but I can say, I think as Rod mentioned earlier, we believe all the positions that are vacant are essential. Okay. Now, the difficulty that we're having, but vacancies, we try and stress that to everybody, that we need to fill the vacancies. Okay, it's a priority on us, but it's difficult. And again, if I look at it, you heard me say detention workers, social workers, 21 vacancies of social workers, 26 judicial clerks. In this economy, it's very hard finding people, qualified people to apply.
To understand that, but your personnel office, I can't remember whether you guys use DHERD or whether you have your own internal.
We have our own.
Okay, so there are special finding job applicants who have specific skills that are difficult to find. You have some process for dealing with that, don't you?
We do. And Senator, if I could just kind of cut to the chase. When we're asking for additional positions, that means that the current number of folks is not sufficient to do the work that we need to do. The difficulty of filling those positions notwithstanding.
I understand that too, but I'm still, so why
ask for more positions that are difficult to fill?
Yeah, if it's a priority and we don't have a system for filling the difficult to fill positions already, then what's the point, I guess? So that's why I'm asking about what are you doing to... And if the current procedures aren't adequate to do it, that's possible, then what's the plan?
Okay, HRs, they're going out much out into the community, a lot more to schools and stuff to try and
job fairs
and recruit people. That's one thing. What they're doing for judicial clerks is they're lessening the qualifications, the MQs they call
entry level
qualifications, to bring that down to what they had before, so that we can get more people that can qualify for these, so they can fill these positions. So they're trying everything they can to try and...
Is it a salary question in some cases?
Salary question. And I can speak from a personal experience. I've been trying to hire a CIP coordinator now for a long period of time. Okay, the thing happens, you get your listing, you go through it, you do your interviews. Oh, we got some good ones. A lot of your, at least in my case, the applicants sometimes come from the mainland. The first one I hired, oh yeah, this guy, we liked him, he said he's going to come, right? Okay. Then maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, oh, his brother died or something like that, so he had to change his mind, or his brother got cancer, I'm sorry, so he changed his mind. Okay, so that's the next one. Next lady, we tried to hire from Texas, and this is another process, and that one didn't work out because the pay wasn't enough. They ask you, can you give us the money to move here? We're already hiring above the minimum. Okay, that was the second one. The third one, hire locally. Good guy, excellent person. He asked for an extra month so he can clear up where he's working before, a little extra time. At the end of that month, he comes and says, I changed my mind. In this case, he went to DAGs, okay, because they are at a higher pay level.
I guess at this point, it just looks like it's not working. So I hope you guys spend some time thinking about what to do next, because,
Believe me, we're focused on it, and we do. I don't want to say bang heads all the time, but say, we don't want these vacancies out there.
Let me end with a couple quick questions on CIP. So the Kauai courthouse, when was the courthouse itself wasn't built that long ago, right?
I think it was 2003.
2003, and the roof failed in what year?
Well, it's like 2014, I think, is when we first started noticing the problems.
Okay. And what was the total cost of that project in the first place for the building?
I want to say 30 million.
30 million. So then we're spending another...
That's about right, I think.
I thought it was less than the Hilo courthouse. 20-something million?
But whether it was 20 or 30, now we're talking about spending another $6.5 million to fix the roof?
Yep. So and the various parts that also deteriorate as a result of the roof,
So is but no one was sued about the original the defect, is that?
No, when we first came upon this situation, we did approach DAGS. You got to remember, DAGS is our agent, so to speak, and they do the contract, and they provide that. So we approached them and said, we got this problem here. Can we do any warranty issues? And they said, no, it was too late. And they would not pursue it.
So that leads me to my final question on this topic is, are the people who built the building eligible to do the repairs for the roof? Because if they are, I don't think they should be, because it seems ridiculous.
Actually, I think they may be eligible, but no, we would not pick them to do the repairs.
You're in the position that you could, within the procurement process, you would be able to reject them?
I think so.
Okay. All right. somebody already asked about Kona. Just one more question on the lump sum. I know it's kind of sometimes a fuzzy line between repair and maintenance and CIP, but in the CIP part of it, are you asking for anything that would normally be categorized as something that should just go under regular funds?
Repair and maintenance for Ali'iolani Hale, for Ka'ahumanu Hale. The circuit court is really the elevators and the fire alarm systems that need to be upgraded.
Well, that's pretty clearly CIP, I think. But are there any non-CIP requests in your CIP request? We've done it before.
In other words, yeah, non-CIP, yes. We will use lump sum money for that. When you say non-CIP, you just mean repair and maintenance. It's a fine line defining sometimes repair and maintenance slant CIP. Okay. Right?
All right.
But yeah, we try and cross wherever we can to use the money that would best suit it. Yeah, we're not taking it and moving it somewhere else.
Okay, so if we look at the CIP list for the lump sum, we're not going to find anything in there that says it should have been somewhere else.
No.
Okay.
We're very careful about following the parameters that the legislature sets out for us.
Those are our higher priority projects than the ones that have bigger dollar values.
Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Just a quick follow-up. First on the Kauai courthouse. I recall that when I was here when it came online, and it was called the Taj Mahal Kauai because it was so elaborate. It just bothers me that you folks put so much money into the building and stuff like the roof and other things were not. So I don't understand how we design these buildings, and you folks aren't the only ones. It's throughout the state. We design these buildings and yet they fail, and then we don't get the warranty or we're not able to recoup the cost because of these contractors. The stadium being one about the rust, but I mean it's terrible how these kinds of monies.
I think it bothers us as much as it does you, because our people are having to live in,
But in good times we build these elaborate buildings and we can't maintain it. So we have to think about that. Practicality and how we maintain these buildings and what kind of buildings we build. We build for design. West Oahu have that high ceilings that we wasted space. I don't understand why we're doing those kinds of things. The other issue I want to follow up on is when you answered Senator Rivera's question about these positions, you said that you were looking at revising the positions, repurposing them. Can you give us a list of which positions you're actually looking at? How many are you proposing that we actually repurpose to see where we're going? Because I agree with Senator Rhodes is that, you can't fill these positions, yet you keep wanting to add. And so let's take the current positions you have. If we have to revise them, change it, because if you can't fill them, you're taking the money that's appropriated for these positions and using it somewhere else, which is not the intent. And then you want more positions so that this budget keeps growing. That's crazy. And finally, the last one is if you can follow up on what it is you're doing at the district court to try to streamline it so that we have less delays and you address these cases a lot quicker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favela.
Just a follow-up to, when you guys pick the contractors, I know you guys always try to go with the lowest bid, and that's not always the greatest idea, but this roof we're talking about, they didn't have any warranty when you guys built the building. They didn't have the contractor or the roofing guys that built the building. They didn't have any warranty, 25, 50 years. I mean, I know when we roof our house is 30 years. So what was the warranty on the roof of that building?
10 years.
10 years. Yeah. So I would advise you, if you guys can, find somebody who can do a warranty at least 30 years on a roof. I mean, it would be nice. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, why don't we take a recess, 5-minute recess, so that we can switch out the Judiciary for the Attorney General. So we reconvene at 11:40.
Good morning. Chair Dela Cruz, Chair Rhodes, and members of the committees. My name is Russell Suzuki, the current Attorney General, but outgoing Attorney General as well. I'd like to just highlight some of the important requests that we have for the legislature this session. And the first one is we've had a request to add $2.5 million to fund our state security operations. In the past, we've had situations that come up like the APEC conference, homeless issues, protests, where we don't have the immediate cash reserves to support these efforts. The efforts is mostly like overtime payments for security officers, investigators in our office. And so what we did this session is a combined effort from the DLNR, Public Safety, and our office to make this one-time request of $2.5 million. It's hard to predict how much money is actually going to be needed. It depends on the situation, but I think what we need to be prepared for is that there are situations where emergencies occur, situations happen, and the state needs to be prepared. What's happened in the past is that when these situations occur and monies are required, we have to deal with budget and finance to see where can monies be shaken from the system, borrowed or transferred, that kind of stuff, which makes it very complicated and timely. So this request is to ask for some kind of a reserve, and we predict that 2.5 may be sufficient. We don't really know. It's something where it's hard to predict, but mainly it covers overtime services and all those other security requirements that the state might have to prepare for. The second request that we're making for is our IT. So our computers are old, and last session the legislature did give us monies to upgrade the system. So we bought new equipment for half of the computers in our office. So this request of $370,000 is to do the second half of the replacement of the computers in our office. And with that, we'll be able to have better technology to tap the cloud storage system, which is the technology state of the art now, which is necessary to operate any kind of computer system in the office. The third request is to request one position for Act 113 that the legislature enacted into law last session. And this position is to help fund or to operate the Hawaii Sexual Assault Response and Training Program. The fourth request is to provide 2 full-time employees to implement Act 187 regarding the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. After talking to the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, there are a lot of uncollected matters that the state can collect and bring monies into the system. So with that, we've asked that 2 positions be created or funded in our office so we can go after these efforts that are outstanding at the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. My next request is to have 1 additional Deputy Attorney General position established to support the public safety efforts. There's a lot of prison litigation that has arisen and has continued to rise in the past and increase. And so this position is to help respond appropriately to those increased requests from prisoner cases. The next request is to ask for another position as a support position for our Kauai office. That office currently is just a 1 attorney, 1 secretary operation, and we just need another support staff to accommodate the situation where the secretary needs to take vacation and that kind of thing. So, in order to operate a small office like that, you really need at least one attorney and 2 support staff to really be efficient and to operate on a daily basis within the work hours of the state. And the last request, or actually the second to the last request, is to explain to you folks what happened, what the federal government has done in reimbursing the state for certain matters where regarding the Department of Human Services. In the past, we were getting reimbursement for these services by average rate, by averaging all of the attorneys in our office and determining what the average hourly salary of those positions are, and then reimbursing us accordingly for the attorneys that provide these services. What the feds have done recently is that to say that they're not going to take the office-wide average anymore, that they will only average out the salary of the attorneys that are actually doing the family law cases. And unfortunately, the family law deputies are the ones that are probably the least senior in our office, and their salaries are probably lower than the average salary within our office. So what that does is it caused the reimbursement rate to be restricted severely in our office, and that's why the amount that we've identified is about a $600,000 loss in the federal reimbursement. And so what we're asking is to convert positions from youth-funded positions to general-funded positions to address that issue. And the last item request that I have is regarding Act 115, which last session the legislature passed, that requires our criminal justice data center to act sort of like a post office for victims of child abuse and stalking, so that their addresses, their resident addresses, would not be identified to the public, so that they can use our office to receive and send mail confidentially. So that summarizes the 8 major requests that our office is requesting this session from the legislature, and I'll open up for questions from you folks. Thank you.
Members, any questions? Senator Kim?
I'm looking at your vacancy report, and you have a whole bunch of investigators dating back from 97, 2003, 2004, all vacant. Can you explain?
Our vacancy problem with our investigators is a chronic problem that we've had. It's based basically because we cannot operate and compete with the police department investigations, basically, and so we've resorted to hiring 89-day hires for many of the positions. We've tried to slowly convert positions to civil service positions and have a entry-level training program, but the real problem with law enforcement is that you really need to have some kind of a training academy like the police department does. We're doing it in-house to the extent that we can. Dan Hanagami, the chief investigator, is a ex-Hawaii Police Department, Honolulu Police Department, retired investigator, and he's put on a program to try to do in-house training, and we are trying to build up a civil service ladder for employees to advance that way, but it takes time, and it's not easy to compete with the private sector on a lot of these things. So yes, unfortunately, like the judiciary and like our child support enforcement agency, it is very difficult to recruit and retain people through our civil service system right now, and unfortunately that's the situation.
How many 89-day hires do you have under the investigators?
Senator, can I get back to you on that? I'm really, unfortunately, our administrative service officer is on vacation. I had approved his vacation as a family vacation a couple of months ago, and it was something where he could not cancel it, and he's not able to appear today. And the second part is that the second in command at our office retired at the end of the year, and so unfortunately I'm having trouble managing the office in that capacity with those problems. But I will get back to you and try to get something to you shortly.
Okay, I understand that. However, This is not a new issue.
I understand.
I have been over this 89-day hire how many years now?
Probably
And last year
decades.
and the year before, you folks told me you were making these changes and it was coming down. So for you to come here today and tell me you don't even know the number, I mean, that's not acceptable.
I'm sorry. I will get that number to you, but I think we have improved a bit on that.
So basically, you're telling me you can't find investigators, and yet you're able to find them in 89-day hires because these retired officers don't want to get permanent, and so you keep keeping them as 89-day hires. So of course you're not going to.
But in the process,
you're not going to
sure.
be able to fill these permanent positions as long as you continue to hire them as 89-day hires.
We are making a concerted effort to create a entry-level training program so that we can bring in, not have to compete with the police department, but bring in people at a entry level and train them to be investigators. That is our intent, and that is our mission in the future.
But it's my understanding that it's lucrative for these retired officers to keep doing these 89
Yes, it is.
And so, the money that is, we should minus out all of these position monies from you folks until you do something about it, because this has been going on for over a decade and more than that.
Senator, we are trying our best to do that.
Every year you folks tell us that, every year. And yet you continue to hire these 89-day hires. And I hear all kinds of stories how, they'll take off, they do all this kind of stuff. Be as it may, these things have to be dealt with. And to even tell me you don't even know the number, that's...
If we were to establish a truly operational system, we would have to request a training facilities to make sure that all of these investigators are trained and certified, just like the police department does with their training academy.
Why don't you give us a list of all of your investigators and tell us what cases they're actually working on? What kind of investigations are they doing that requires all of this? So we know what their workload is to see whether or not, in fact, it's justified that we have all of this kind of training and these hours and these positions. Because we need to bring this to an end. It's just ridiculous that we have people on 89-day hires, 5 years, somewhere longer than that. That's crazy. The other question I want to ask is, what's happening on the opioids lawsuit? Do we have a lawsuit going?
We did not join the national concerted efforts.
Why not? Why didn't you do that?
Because in a lot of those lawsuits, when you become a participating party, there's also legal expenses that you have to contribute to the operation, to the litigation. At this point in time, the opioid epidemic, although in Hawaii, is rising. It was not at the level where we had the significant situation like Indiana did and other states.
Let me stop you there, because how do you justify us jumping into the immigration? It didn't affect us. I mean, you folks pick and choose which cases you wanted to jump into. We wanted to be the lead on the immigration issue that really didn't affect us, but this issue didn't come out as far as, it doesn't really affect us, so forth. So you need to be consistent about this. And the opioids affect us more, and it's more dangerous to our citizens and to the lives of the people here than the immigration issue did. So I don't understand the justification of why you're not pursuing that, and yet you folks would have pursued this whole immigration issue.
The immigration lawsuit was capped at $200,000 by Neil Cattell, who had volunteered his services.
I thought it was above $50,000.
Well, it's between 100. Well, it was including expenses. It came up to less than 200,000, but approximately that's the amount. So we knew exactly the amount of expenses that we would have to incur. The opioid litigation is a litigation that's going to continue for years and years. Part of the decision making in the opioid litigation is that there are lots of attorneys that came and offered to represent the state. The real problem is that many of the companies that are involved in the production of these drugs like Purdue, are on the verge of bankruptcy. And the issue is going to be, how can you get around the bankruptcy laws in order to get monies to fund the liabilities that are going to be in the millions and billions of dollars? Is the result going to be that Hawaii will be able to get an amount that would be sufficient to justify the litigation? That is the real question. The main manufacturers of these companies, based on the liabilities that are presumed or predicted, will be filing bankruptcy.
Okay, well, we were told that we were going to, earlier when it was politically correct to do so, that we were going to get involved in the lawsuit on opioids. Your office reported that. Your former AG reported
we were investigating at that point in time, we were investigating whether or not that was in the best interest of the state. We were soliciting and we were listening to attorneys that were coming to Hawaii to say that they wanted to represent the state. But the key issue that I asked every time that they presented is, how do you get over the bankruptcy question? Because once a corporation files for bankruptcy, then the litigation is told. You cannot do anything after that. You would have to go into bankruptcy court to deal with the issue.
So what were we going to gain by doing the immigration? Not one person died from that. And what were we going to gain from that?
Protecting the Constitution, the United States Constitution.
And we were the only state that could do that.
No, we were not the only states that did it. Washington State also did it.
But we didn't have to. I mean, the other states would have done the same thing like the opioids are doing. Other states.
We claimed we had two victories in that lawsuit. We forced the Trump administration to change and modify.
And do you think it would not have been done if we weren't in the lawsuit?
It was done because of our lawsuit.
No, but if we weren't on that lawsuit, that other states wouldn't have done that or have jumped in on it? We didn't have to be first.
Well, that's speculating, but perhaps Washington could have gotten the same result that we would.
I would just like to see the AG use our monies that would benefit our people directly and in a more efficient manner. And I think this opioid issue is one that required more attention than did the immigration issue at that point.
Thank you.
And that I hope we don't do this because it's politically good for the office, but that it makes sense for the people of the state of Hawaii.
If we were to have retained a private attorney to handle the lawsuit for the opioid, it would have required also us to contribute to the cost of the litigation, which, and the other part of the problem is going to be when discovery requests are made to the state of Hawaii, it's going to be made to our Department of Human Services, and the question would be whether we have the resources to timely produce the discovery request that is going to be made to our state agencies. That impact is tremendous. If you have ever been involved in litigation as a defense, on the defense side, where they bombard you with all of these production requests, and you have to timely respond to that. We don't really have the technology to computerize all of our state documentation.
And to some of the other ones that we've joined in.
What do you mean with?
Didn't we join in on the tobacco lawsuit?
Yes, but the tobacco litigation eventually ended into a settlement, and so, but continuously, we still have to monitor our compliance with the settlement agreement, which.
I understand, but I'm just saying that you guys seem to pick and choose this. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't mean to belabor this, but I hope you folks will take that into consideration.
I'll take your advice seriously.
Members, any further questions?
Thanks, Chair. So going back to the state security operations request, I don't know. I'm not really sure where to start. So first of all, is the money for expenditure by AG personnel? Or are you contracting out for something? Or are you giving it to a different department? Or I don't quite understand why it comes to the AG.
The issue is whether we would have the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Public Safety, and our office each separately come for requesting appropriations for that. The problem with with determining like how much each department is going to need or whatever is pretty difficult to predict, and that's why it was the administration's decision that let's put the responsibility with the Attorney General's office to coordinate. But in fact, the money was not be solely for the Attorney General's office.
So the bill that the administration is sending out, I guess it's in the budget. It's in the budget. They're saying we retain the right to move the money from one to another.
I think we'll be able to. We'll probably be able to do that administratively with the governor and the Department of Budget and Finance. But yes, it'll be the intention is to be able to request the money from one source, but use it for
three agencies: AGs, DLNR, and Public Safety.
Correct.
Okay. And then most of us, when we see this, we just see Mauna Kea. So is this about Mauna Kea? And
it includes Mauna Kea, but it also includes homeless raids that the Department of Public Safety might be involved in, protests at the Olani Palace, in the event that we have any kind of international conferences again, or emergencies like the Kauai flooding or the eruptions on the Big Island. Anytime that you need to have security where overtime and travel and that kind of expenses might be incurred.
So in terms of the 2.5, how's it been split up? Is there a estimate as to how much would be for Mauna Kea, how much would be for any of the other contingencies?
No,
it's just a lump sum that we don't really know.
It's truly an amount that we thought might be a reasonable amount. We don't want to request a lot and have it just sitting there. That's not wise, but also didn't want to be left where we have nothing to look for. Problem is, in the past, is whenever there is an emergency, it's hard to find monies within the system to
So what did you do last year? I don't believe we approved this. You had the same request last year.
We did.
What did you do when the hurricane? I mean, we had a number of issues where this might have been.
Right, but fortunately, last session, the legislature did appropriate the emergency monies for Kauai for the emergency, which was more than what was necessary for that situation. And I think that was what happened was the monies was available to allow the advancement of the monies, and then we got recoupment back, or we anticipate getting recoupment back from the federal governments, from FEMA.
Same for Hawaii County and the volcanoes?
No, I think Hawaii County was the problem where we couldn't use the Kauai money for the Big Island.
Okay. Then you mentioned on page 2 of the presentation that the address confidentiality program from Act 115 from last session cannot actually be established without funding, but there's no amount specified in Table 6 as a priority. So we asked for specific money for other acts from last year, but not for this one.
We're asking for one position for that. To operate that position, operations.
Maybe you could just tell me where that is.
I have it at my chart. It's a ATG program identification 231, suborg BD.
I'm sorry, say it again. It was
ATG 231.
231.
Suborg BD. Implementing Act 115-18 relating to address confidentiality.
Okay. All right.
Method of financing.
We didn't see it on the way through. The Table 6 was, I mean, it could be totally innocent, but it would be you have priorities 1 through 4, and then it skips to 7, then it skips to 9, and it skips to 15. So are there other priorities that you just didn't mention, or was that just a clerical error that you threw out stuff and then just didn't?
I think it was there were other matters in there that we took out, and so that became the next higher.
Okay, so there are other issues that you'd like to deal with. You just didn't rise to the top of it. Okay. Well, I have a couple more. If you want, I'll finish up. Okay. For Federal Department of Human Rights. Okay. So the reimbursement question with the feds, who do they accept our rates, or do they set the rate for specific kinds of services? This is for the family court, the lowering of reimbursements that you're anticipating.
In previous years, the reimbursement rate, well, they determined the formula, but recently they changed the formula. So it was basically the average wage of a deputy attorney general was the rate that they used, and now they're changing it to only the deputies that specifically do that work.
So I guess I'm a little. My question: if we were to reassign some of these family court cases to more senior attorneys, then we would get paid more.
Yes, or if we paid them higher wages than what they're receiving.
But the feds would reimburse us for us if we did that?
If the deputies that are actually doing the work are paid that salary, yes, they would reimburse us.
So why wouldn't we want to?
Because those are the, and if you give pays based on your job assignment and not on seniority or performance, then it upsets the whole salary structure within the department. If that becomes the entry-level wage for a deputy, because the family law deputies are...
Fair enough, but I guess I'm a little confused as to why the family court matters are considered why are those a lower priority or given to the lower seniority people?
Well, it's just by experience that those jobs, they're repetitive. They do the same types of cases on a daily basis. The fact that they go to family court is not an easy job. I've done that job when I joined the office as well.
So I'm curious
it's not, but it's also something that you can do daily, and you can do it from a 8 to 5 time schedule. You don't probably need to take work home and do stuff or do much research on it. The cases are the same. And so, I don't want to demean the position, but it's not a position that requires a lot of new legal work. It's the same work that you can do based on your knowledge. You can learn the assignment quickly, and if you enjoy doing that type of work, then that's fine. But it doesn't give you the.
So our response to this then is to ask for 4 new full-time attorneys? I don't understand.
To convert, because they're U funded, so they're special funded because we get the reimbursements from the feds.
Right.
But what we're saying now is because we're going to have this $600,000 cut in our reimbursement, that the legislature we're asking the legislature to make those positions general funded to offset the $600,000.
Okay. I'm just trying to follow the money in my mind here. So then, who gets paid what at that point?
They will still get paid the same salaries that they get, but the funding source is not going to be the reimbursement. It's going to be through the general fund.
But it's doing the same work that they were doing before.
That's correct.
That we were reimbursed for before.
That's correct. And it's the result is it's because the federal government is refusing to reimburse us on the formula that was in place in the past.
Okay. All right. One final question on table 11 shows. Okay, we already went over the vacancies, so I don't think I'll belabor that point. I would note, though, it looks like it's not just the investigators that have the 89-day hires. It was a number of a clerk, office assistant 2. There's like 7 of them, and then there's another 4 for. Well, they're all office assistant 2s or 3s. Why is that a difficult? Why do you need to go 89-day hires with those categories?
A lot of those positions are civil service positions that the applicant pool is not sufficient to fill the position. So we try to actively recruit and fill based on the civil service list that comes. But like every other state agency, the list does not is not sufficient to fill those positions. So we need to temporarily hire somebody.
Have you tried to work with DHERD to do the special when you have a shortage position?
Yes, we have. I think every agency has. That's been a chronic problem. These aren't positions that you would normally classify as hard to fill because they're entry-level clerk positions.
They appear to be hard to fill.
They are hard to fill, but not for reasons that traditionally is used to determine.
Well, I guess at this point it just seems like we should be looking to the next step because my impression is this is not a new problem. It's been going on.
It's not a new problem, but it also becomes a collective bargaining issue with the unions. If you're going to increase the entry level for those salary positions, then you have to has the ripple effect for every other position. So.
Fair enough. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to turn your attention to Table 4. This was the budget requests that were, I guess, you sent in to the governor and Budget and Finance and the reviews. So I have a general question then. I think $3 million was approved for the event security, but there were a number of other items that were not approved that total less than that, but they were related to implementing some of the new laws that the legislature put in. What do you intend to do to help implement those laws then if you didn't get the funding from the governor?
Yeah, so what we'd have to do would be to have the general funded deputies or staff perform those responsibilities until we can actually get funding but from the legislature. So there's a couple of those matters where like the tobacco registration and stuff like that we're going to add that as additional responsibilities to people until we can get the legislature. So, it would be ideal if we could have a permanent position to permanently operate some of those programs, but to the extent that we can operate by using existing manpower, that's what we're doing.
What about the Medicaid fraud control units? And that right now supposedly is funded with special funds. Do you actually have the special funds? Is that an issue?
I believe the legislature did fund us last session on that, so I think we're okay on that one.
So what was the thinking on converting to general funds for that unit?
Can I get back to you on that? I think I know the answer, but I kind of want to make sure that it's the correct one.
Now, what about adding litigation funds for diligent tobacco enforcement? That's also going to be pursued by your other deputies then?
Our problem with the tobacco unit is that we've had a lot of retirements, and that was the problem with the situation where the people that had the institutional knowledge and the litigation expertise left the office to retirement, and so we're trying to re-educate and get new people into the unit to be able to carry on. The tobacco issue is going to be forever, years in the future. We need to build the capacity, and I don't want to outsource those to special counsel to have to deal with. I want to build the in-house knowledge so that we don't have to rely on outside counsel to handle those matters.
And I guess the Career Criminal Prosecution Program, are these the monies that are basically go as grants to the counties then?
Some of it is, yes.
Okay. And so I guess this wasn't funded as well. I think in the past it was a line item years ago, I think, right?
Correct.
And I think so the request to the governor was to include that as line item then?
It was I think the problem is that we need to encourage the county prosecutors to take on those cases without the appropriate funding. They're not going to be willing to do that. But you also need to make sure that the county's going to say okay, and they're going to, if they get the funds, that they're going to be willing to take on those cases.
And So why, and this wasn't approved, so do you still have a commitment from the counties that they're still going to do this?
I don't believe we have to continue to deal with the Honolulu County prosecutors to make sure that they're willing to do it. For now, I think that that's not one of their ongoing initiatives.
So as going back to, I guess the question I started with was, you're getting $3 million for special event security. Are any of these other unfunded requests of higher priority than security?
I think we're asking for $2.5 million.
I'm sorry, yeah. You initially requested $3 million.
Yes.
From the governor. Sorry about that. But same question. All right, is that higher than these other requests that were not funded?
I need to get back to you on that. If you're saying is that, are there other requests that was not funded?
Well, if we don't give you the 2.5, these other things that were requested to implement some of these statutes the legislature thought were important, or to generally fund some of these other programs instead of security money.
Yeah, but the 2.5 was not just solely for our office's operations, but it was also including DLNR and public safety as well. So the proportion for our office would not be the total 2.5 million.
Well, how much is for your office? If it's relatively small, why is it in your budget as opposed to public safety or DLNR?
It's just that amongst the three departments, we decided that the Attorney General would take the lead on that.
Well, if you're taking the lead, is this a big priority of yours then, as opposed to some of these other things that you requested?
Well, I think it is a priority. It's something where if something happens, we need to be prepared.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Just a quick follow-up. So these 80-90 hires, are they paid exactly what is in the budget for the full-time positions? Or are they paid more?
I need to get, your question is what is the salary for the 80-90 hires?
Yeah, so these positions that are permanent positions, but you're hiring 80-90 hires.
For investigators.
Right, or even the others, like are you paying them more or less than what's
the position cost? I think it's the same position. It's not an increase in the salary.
Okay.
But I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Senator Favela.
Yeah, sir, I go back to what Senator Donna was saying. I was sitting here listening, and you was talking about the opioids and immigration and the amount numbers about how much you guys are going to invest into the immigration. This problem, I mean, maybe not in your community, but in my community, that's a big problem. Listening to you talk about dollars and cents, to me, I understand, you like crunch numbers, but when you come to human beings, people are getting sick and dying. I think there was a little bit more importance to what she was trying to get across to you, but I don't think you kind of visualize this, because when she was telling you that nobody died during the immigration stuff, but you guys jumped on that real quick. This opioid thing is not going away. And it's really becoming a big problem in Hawaii. So we're going to wait till more people die and other people take a lead, and then we're going to say, oh, we're going to get involved. I mean, that's what I was hearing here. I mean, I listened to you talking to her, and that's what you're saying. Right now, it's dollars and cents you're talking about. But to me, when it comes to family and people who is addicted to this drug, seriously, we're talking about not just kids. We're talking about old people, adults, people who've been playing sports all their life. They were in their sports career, high school career, college career, because of this drug. But it's not an impact, because, investment-wise, that's what I'm hearing, costing money. In the future, the litigation or whatever you're saying is going to cost money. The tobacco one was kind of a win because they never go out of business. You're telling me these guys going to go out of business? So what if they go out of business? At least we would try.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's the understanding I'm getting, because you're saying, oh, we're not going to be able to get money out of small claims court and all this kind of stuff. But if we as a state show that this is a priority for us, more so than the immigration, then we can probably get these guys more help. Right now, there's a lot of people who are suffering, and then it's not being, to us, now you're telling it's not a priority from you guys. It's something that's not clear to me. So, and you kind of clear it up for me?
I'll try to clear it up. When I'm saying it's like, it's not just the money capacity, whether we can afford the litigation. The impact is going to be on our state departments that have the information and the documents that are going to be requested through the litigation. You're going to be asking the Department of Human Services to go through their records and turn over and review thousands of files on the Medicaid reimbursements and that kind of stuff for payments for purchases of drugs. So the workers at the state departments are going to have to do their actual work, but also have to timely, because when discovery requests are made, you have deadlines as to when you got to comply with these information requests. And if you don't, then there's going to be sanctions against the state for violating the court orders on producing documents. So those are factors that we have to weigh in. Like, can we depend on our departments to come through with providing all of these records timely while also doing their other jobs as well? Unfortunately, we don't have our records computerized to the extent that we can, but also these records are probably medical HIPAA compliant information where you cannot just copy and disclose information. You got to go through them to make sure that the confidential information are not going to be revealed. You're going to have to redact certain documents. Then you're going to have to electronically transmit it for discovery purposes. So, it's not just so much the cost of the litigation, it's the impact on the State Department's resources and how can we comply? Can we, if we had all the records readily available and we can just say, we're not going to have a problem with discovery. We're going to be able to prove our liabilities that these drugs were purchased and used within the state of Hawaii. That's going to be the problem. So just to reiterate, what I'm trying to say is it's not just the money issue, it's also the human resource factors that we're going to have to go through. Like, can we get our departments to come through with the discovery request?
Well, I heard you talking to her and immigration, it was about money. So this is a little bit more clear. Let's do it again. I mean, it's picking and choosing, right? Basically, that's what it is. You're picking and choosing. You're saying that you guys had a victory because Trump changed his mind. As the senator was saying too, you don't think the other states would have probably done something that probably would have done it and we never have to jump into it? You see what I'm saying? You're saying all the departments and all this, but people are still going to be dying, still going to get addicted. So if we as a state don't take it seriously, other states, then what we're going to do? We're going to just wait till the departments or you guys are forced to do it?
We could take on and file our own lawsuit against the drug companies as well. What's happening now is the companies are looking at, and it's not going to be too late for us to join. If we believe that we have enough of a problem and that we can manage the litigation, just to tell you again, the problem is not just to go after the drug companies, because they're going to come back for discovery requests against the state to get us to show the evidence that we have. And that's going to rely on getting information and documents from our state departments that are really not equipped at this time to really have that information readily available and to be able to deliver that on a timely basis. So those are the practical issues that we have to deal with, where, you have to make that judgment.
But isn't that what the big farmers are counting on? The big farmers got all this money and they support the attorney general's meeting every year, and they wine and dine the attorney generals, and they're counting on that we're not going to spend this money to go after them.
I've never been to any conference where they wine and dine.
My predecessor did. He was the chair of that conference. But how many states are suing? I know Ohio is one.
Well, Indiana and Ohio are probably the main states that are being affected by. It's the Midwest states.
Who else jumped in? Only those two states?
No, there's a lot of states that are joining in the lawsuit.
States, because I'm sure they have the same issues that we have. So can we get a list of those states, Mr. Chair, who are in the litigation, and perhaps why we shouldn't possibly?
Well, the issue is whether states join the joint lawsuits as well as states joining independently with their own attorneys, which
Isn't it cheaper to go jointly?
Not necessarily. Well, you can't make your own decisions when you go jointly. And then the problem would be, like, to get a share of the pie, Hawaii probably be at the bottom of the totem pole on that.
But isn't that the case with all joint litigations?
It depends on how affected your state is.
I mean, but that's the case for the tobacco, that's the case for all these others.
Well, again,
I don't want to argue the cases with you, but I'm just saying that you guys need to be consistent in looking at what the impact is. And I know all the excuses, but again, it's impacting our state. And other states are doing it, and if we jump in on with them, it could be less. Have you folks investigated?
Again, I think the real problem is, will we be able to produce the evidence to establish our damages sufficiently and timely? And that's going to require reliance on the Department of Human Services to go through all of their records.
Wouldn't it be good to know what was the impact? Shouldn't we have that numbers anyway? I mean, how do we know how impactful this whole epidemic is on Hawaii if we don't have those numbers and those records? We should have it anyway. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, meeting adjourned. Tomorrow we have a hearing at Monday.
Nobody's coming tomorrow.